Welcome to Dr. Knows. Today, Nancy Collins is joining us. She'll be doing a signing here at the store. But we wanted to take a few minutes to talk to Nancy about her career as a writer and her career in comics. Okay, Nancy, first off, let's talk a little bit about how you got started writing to start with and your incredible accomplishment very early on with Sonia Blue.
Well, I pretty much was, according to my family, came out being a writer even before I could read and write. I would draw stories and then stand next to my parents and tell them what was going on. So I not only was I in the line to being just a writer, but also apparently a comics writer. So, I got involved in fanzines back in the 70s.
Which is how you and I got to know.
Yeah, that's how we got to know each other. I've known Cliff over 45 years.
Yeah,
45 years.
Yep.
Yeah. I saw your eyes bug out when I said that. So, back then it was all mimeograph.
Oh yes.
Or a spirit duplicator.
Yep.
If you're even worse, it was a spirit duplicator.
And those of you who didn't experience fanzines in the pre-photocopy days don't know what it's like to have to deal with ink all over your house when you're trying to print a fanzine.
Or spirit.
Oh yes, you may if you're old enough, you may remember those alcohol-soaked purple handouts from school where you could smell the alcohol coming off the paper.
You could sniff it and get high.
Ah yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
and then Xerox, and then
yes.
now everything's digital.
Yes.
So people might not even remember taking your fanzines to Kinko's.
Yes.
So. Or Kinko's.
And that's right. And
yeah,
is now.
Yeah, and so I did that for years. That's how I kind of learned how to write short stories and things. And then I kind of, because of my involvement in fandom, I was actually part of the cyberpunk group with Bill Gibson and Lou Shiner. Came in through John Shirley, who was. Who I was a fan of, and he brought me into that group just when the cyberpunks were really taking off, Bruce Sterling and all that, and I was trying to become a cyberpunk writer, but I realized, relatively quickly that my science foo, my tech foo, is not up to being a science fiction writer. And I've always been a horror fan,
right?
So I thought, well, I'll just do that. I don't have to worry too much about that, about it being, someone go, no, you can't do that. This is yes, I can.
You can. It's your book. That's the way it works.
That's how my vampires work. God damn it. And so I went into because John Shirley was also involved in the splatterpunk movement at the time. It was both the cyberpunks and the splatterpunks. Of the two, the cyberpunks had more cultural relevance. The splatterpunk kind of turned into a cul-de-sac, but that's how I got my first novel published, is through John. He basically tutored me through the mail on how to write, and when he was satisfied with the first 5 or 6 chapters of Sunglasses After Dark, he introduced me to his editor, and they decided they wanted to pick it up, and so I was left to pedal the rest of the way on my little bicycle myself, my little tricycle, and nowadays I look back at it, and it's like you turn around and look, oh, I just basically crossed over between, the two World Trade Centers on Trade Center towers on a unicycle with a blindfold on and didn't know it, and managed to end up having a best-selling book that won a bunch of awards.
Yes.
And I'm one of the, it more or less was accidentally invented the urban fantasy genre.
That's right. Very much
So, not that someone had to tell me that years later, but because I just thought I was writing a vampire novel, and so, and then that led me into big time publishing and editing, and it also led me into writing comics. And my first job as a comic book writer was, they gave me a monthly title, they gave me Swamp Thing. Yeah.
This is Nancy's.
Yeah. You could have just picked up one of them.
We'll show them this is the entire body of work she did, which is quite an accomplishment to not miss a deadline. 2 years of a monthly run with no deadlines missed.
Yeah.
Very few writers can do that today.
Yeah, and again, I didn't realize I was riding a unicycle, and that was and I was the first writer to come out under be published under the Vertigo imprint. I helped launch Vertigo at DC, the Swamp Thing, and through that I got to become good friends with Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Steve Bissette, and also worked with people like Grant Morrison, Peter Milligan. Basically the entire Vertigo bench.
And you already knew some about New Orleans and.
Oh yeah, I was living in New Orleans.
So
when I landed the gig, I had been living in New Orleans for 10 years, and then I moved to New York. So yeah, I as I say in my introduction in the omnibus, I'm possibly, to my knowledge, the only writer of Swamp Thing who ever lived in the Bayou country. Because not only did I grow up live in New Orleans, I grew up on Bayou Bartholomew in Arkansas, which is like the longest bayou, continuous bayou in the world.
Yep.
And so I grew up knowing that when you go out, you have to keep your eye. You can appreciate the nature, but you have to watch where you're stepping, because that log may be an alligator, and you might, that rock might actually be a snapping turtle, or that vine might actually be a water moccasin.
Yes.
So, so I grew up understanding both the beauty and the danger inherent in the swamps, so I feel like that gave a certain verisimilitude, I can't say it, veracity to what I was writing about the people in the swamps and the Cajuns and everything like that.
And it is very true. If you haven't had
I made the mistake of spelling, of actually writing a couple of the Cajun dialogue phonetically, which is how I heard it.
Right.
It's like, and people go, "That's not how you say it." No, but that's how I hear it.
Yeah.
So it's I had a great time doing Swamp Thing. I took him to Mardi Gras. I mean, I also broke up his marriage, but that was an editorial edict. And but yeah, we did a lot of stuff. I was very lucky to have some excellent artists working with me along the way. My inker Kim DeMulder, he was my ride and die. He was riding shotgun with me during the entire 2-year run, and Scott Eaton was with me through most of the from like the middle of the second year on. Mm-hmm. And Russ Braun stepped in a couple of times when Scott had to take breaks.
Yep.
And so it was good. I mean, it was, and my editor Stuart Moore, he and I are still very good friends. I'm still in contact with a lot of these guys, and I also got to be very good friends with both Lynn Wine and Bernie Wrightson. Mm-hmm. Both of them rest in peace. All of us who toil in the Swamp Thing vineyard, owe a very deep debt of gratitude to both those men.
Very much so. Very much so. And if you haven't had a chance to read her Swamp Thing, it's amazing because knowing the setting so well, she doesn't have to force the New Orleans elements into the story the way some writers do. You get the feeling that some writers said, "Oh, I've written a pretty good story. Hand me that guidebook on New Orleans now. Let me see what I can squeeze in there."
We gotta mention Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
So.
And now, the Blade Runner series that you're writing currently for Titan Comics, how did that come about?
That was one of the he's one of my editors, but he's also the media rep for Alcon Entertainment, which holds the IP on Blade Runner, and I think Prometheus as well. I mean, everything that kind of comes out of that Ridley Scott Blade Runner thing.
Right.
Jeff Connor, who I first met when he was the publisher of Screen Press back in the 80s. He contacted me because it's in case you don't know, Blade Runner Black Lotus is based on the Blade Runner franchise and the anime series called Black Lotus, about a young female replicant that is trying to find her way in the world. She was created as a weapon, but now she doesn't want to be a weapon anymore, and she's basically having to run for her life to have a life. And Jeff contacted me and asked if I'd be interested, and I said sure, because they wanted, I'm kind of known for specializing in quote unquote strong women, and without it being overt. So I just write them as they are, and basically they gave me the scripts for the first season of Black Lotus, and then when it was finally produced, because this was a couple of years ago, so and I said, well, when you're ready, let me know, and because they had to get the series produced and out first, and I've been working on it since this time last year. And now I'm going to be doing 2 more miniseries.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're so pleased with what you've done here. They've contracted with you to do 2 more miniseries.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Superb. Now, also, let's ask about Red Sonja. Why did I say that? Sonja Blue. I'm looking at the Red Sonja book over here. I had Red Sonja in my mind. Sonja Blue stuff. Is it? There was a graphic novel at one point. It's out of print now. Any chance that's coming back into print?
Oh, well, it's still technically in print because you can get the digital version through Comixology, and I think through directly through IDW. But as for the print edition, I don't know.
Okay.
That is one of those things. I'll have to chase somebody down at IDW to see who owns those. I was about to say the SAPs, but the SAPs, but they don't do that anymore.
Right.
The
digital equivalent thereof.
Yeah, who has the files?
Yes.
Yeah, the height, because basically the comic book, the graphic novel would have to be on my computer would not be able to handle printing out those because of the size of the files. But Stan Shaw might actually be my collaborator, the artist. Stan Shaw might be a better person to ask about that.
Well, let's hope it gets back into a physical print.
It was a gorgeous.
Looking for it all the time.
It is a gorgeous book.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. It had originally been published by Glenn Danzig's Verotic Publications in the '90s, and in floppy format. And Stan and I had never liked the coloring on it because her eyes would change color literally from panel to panel like a stoplight, and it was too garish for the paper. It just always, it was good. It was quality paper, but the ink on it just looked like it was just sitting on top of it.
And it is a problem a lot of people have when they're not sure what paper they're going to be printing for. You have to prepare a book differently for different types of paper.
Yeah. And so when we had the chance to, when IDW approached us about, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, about putting it back out in a graphic novel format, Stan, we couldn't afford to buy the SAPs from Danzig. And but Stan had the original art, and we had it relettered because the original letterer had died. And it wasn't really, the original lettering wasn't really up to graphic novel standards now. And and it gave me a chance to rewrite it slightly, so it would read more like a graphic novel and less like an adapted novel. And Stan took the opportunity to teach himself digital coloring while doing this, and it ended up looking just absolutely gorgeous. If it kept more to the noir feel of the Sunglasses After Dark, Sonya Blue world, instead of it being just four color. It's a very muted palette.
Yes, it is.
And it looks gorgeous.
It really looks the art so well. Having the artist involved in the coloring.
The artist colored
changes
himself.
everything,
Yes.
And I will say that earlier this year, when my good friend and outstanding writer Charles Rutledge, a co-editor with me on books that we do through Pavan Press, when we were putting together an anthology of original vampire stories, we asked Nancy about a Sonya Blue story, and she gave us just an outstanding story that, if I understand right, that's going to be incorporated into a larger novel.
Yeah, I've been working on a new Sonya Blue novel for years now. It's slow and steady work, but mainly because I had other things happening in my life, and to be perfectly honest, Twilight just blew the bottom out of getting a honest to God vampire, horror novel featuring vampires published.
Yep.
I mean, it just blew the bottom out of it. I don't know if it'll ever recover because of that. It's been, you're finally starting to see legitimate vampire media that's not teenage girl oriented popping up on streaming now.
Yeah.
But in terms of books, it was just so is it paranormal romance? No. It's just well, sorry. And or is it a young adult thing? No. In fact, it makes fun of it quite a bit. It's about vampires who basically are using a thinly veiled version of Twilight and the internet to lure young girls, kind of like pimps.
And I will say the story she's done in here, which is going to be a part of that book, it is an amazingly powerful and intense story about I guess we would say the vampire equivalent of wine connoisseurs for the most part.
Yeah. There's a character called the sommelier, and he has a very nice cellar, and he's proud of his cellar, and fresh pressings.
And the segments where he's invited vampiric friends over for tastings and for auctions, just intensely creepy and a very powerful segment of the book. It was just
and it's all set in Vegas, where it makes it seem like, that had happened there. Why not?
Well, we really appreciate you being here to join us today, and we've got some people who'd love to get you to sign some stuff.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
You're gonna ask a Q&A?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that.
Anyone
have any questions?
I was going to be annoying and ask if Joy's love was real, but I'll ask a different AI question. So AI now obviously is doing like artwork and stuff. And I like to draw, I like to do artwork, and I've just kind of done that my whole life. And when I used one of the apps to make AI art, this was like, I guess like a year ago or something now, I kind of had this weird like existential crisis moment, because it was making artwork that I was like, man, this is really good. Like, this is really cool. And then I kind of realized that there was like, it was AI, like it was a computer that did that.
We were always putting ourselves out of work.
Well,
as a species, we're always putting ourselves out of work.
The one thing that like grounded me was the source material that the algorithm and the AI is using.
It's all based
like
off
all from humans. So I was like, all right, so we still have some input in this thing that I'm looking at. But like, I don't know, this is kind of a broad question, but it's like, how do you feel about that coming closer and closer to being blurred?
Oh yeah, well, it's already being blurred. But the thing is, this is the difference, is I see it as a tool, not necessarily the end product itself. I see AI art or AI art software as a tool, and it can only produce as as well as the person who's using it. So your imagination, your ability to,
Like the prompts and stuff.
yeah, the prompts, everything, that's up to you to figure out. And also when it spits out four of those things for you to pick from, if you go, man, that's crap, or that's disturbing. It's
Yeah.
like, that's far more disturbing than it should be. Because basically it doesn't know the difference between beauty and hideous.
Right.
It really doesn't. And it will give you that in equal measure if you're not careful. Or I have friends. I have friends who are themselves artists who are dipping their toes into it just to see what it's capable of.
Yeah.
And I will also mention that when the first digital graphic novels came out, Shatter, Batman Digital Justice, over 35 years ago, a lot of people said, "Oh, this is going to put the physical artists out of business. Everything will be done digitally. There'll be no more physical art." There's still quite a market for physical artwork, so that the artist producing stuff, pen and ink from his own hand, is still hard to top. And some artists who tried going all digital for a while said, the problem with digital is I have nothing to sell. Nobody wants to buy a CD-ROM of my files or a thumb drive.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
Yes.
Well, welcome to my world at the comic book conventions. I mean, that's the thing is, me and Neil Gaiman have talked about this more than once. It was just like doing convention. He said, well, "How come you don't do so many conventions?" And he goes, "It's unless you're paying me to be there,
Right.
it's a time. It just there's no." It takes money out of my pocket because I could be working, because basically everything you see here that I brought I had to pay for,
Right.
and I had, granted I get like a retailer's discount on it from the publisher, but I'm still paying up front for my own product. And whereas all my artist friends could be and they've got their weekend covered.
And I always wondered how we fell out of this habit in the 60s and in the 70s. A lot of writers were actually selling signed pages of their scripts or their manuscripts and making money doing that. And now I keep thinking there has to be still be a market.
Well,
for
not
that
only
somewhere
that,
there.
but back up until the mid late 80s, it was traditional for the publishers to split up the comics, the original pages. The inker would get. The artist would get the lion's share. The actual penciler would get the lion's share, and then the inker would get the share after that. But the writer would also get at least 3 pages out of each comic.
Right.
That stopped.
Yeah.
That stopped.
Unfortunately.
And I mean, and the thing is, every time I bring it up with my artist friends, they go, "Oh, you should, no, okay." It's like,
but there wouldn't be a story for you to draw.
Yeah,
if you hadn't
yeah.
done this story.
yeah. Well, and some of them have been have been generous and given me pages, but no. Sometimes I usually, like everyone else, I'll have to go to the comic book conventions and page through these things and buy these bins and buy pages of original art that has my words attached to it and my characters in it. So it's kind of weird. But yeah.
Any other questions? Anything?
It interested me what you're saying, how comic books work now. Could you just kind of elaborate on the beginning, the finished product, like how the concept in your head and then it comes into now?
You also have to understand that when I first got into comics, graphic novels didn't exist. Well, there were a few, but there was no such thing as writing to the trade. And that's what it's called now. Where you have self-contained story arcs that they're coming out monthly or whatever, but the intention is for them to be collected as trade paperbacks and put in bookstores. That did not happen back then. So I wrote a lot of what are called one and dones. Or I might have subplot that went 2 or 3 issues, but nothing that would go nothing like what Neil Gaiman does with Sandman or Saga or anything like that, or Walking Dead. It was more just maybe at most I'd have a story that might last 3 issues, and basically what I would I can only describe what I did and what I, because I can't. Everyone has a different experience in the business, but they would ask me, okay, can you give us thumbnails for the 12 issues for this year? What you intend to do? What basically just little one paragraph descriptions of what's going to happen in each issue, and I did that, like tiny little outlines, and then and that would get either approved or disapproved, and most of the time they'd just go ahead and approve it. They just want to know if you're going to have anyone crossing over from another, title or whatever, and if they had to orchestrate that, and then I would write the script. And back then my scripts were anywhere from 24 to 26 pages, and now they're down to 22. Mm-hmm. And I would write them kind of like a screenplay or a play, which is like, page 1, panel 1, colon, and then I block the action. That's the first that paragraph is what they call action block, where you're telling, and I'm not writing to anyone except the guy who or woman who is illustrating the story. So it's extremely, telling them, okay, this is who's in this panel. This is what the action is. This is what's going on. This is the setting. And I would, and if it was important, I would tell them. I would block it as to, so and so's in the foreground, so and so's in the background. This is, or something like this is going on in the background. And then I would have below that, I would have the dialogue and the sound effects, and the sound effects were always marked with FX or SFX, and then I would have to sit there and sound it out. Okay, what's it supposed to be? And I learned I had to do that because once I just typed in some, for these demonic creatures that are very like Lovecraftian. They were pirates, and now they look like, Lovecraft's deep ones. Mm-hmm. And I just typed in something not Lovecraftian. In one of them, Lovecraftian dialogue or something, some kind of Lovecraftian, and John Costanza just wrote something Lovecraftian, and I went, and I caught it when they brought it back for me for editing, and I said, okay, well, I'll send them the thing what elder sign is supposed to look like. So, and so I learned, like I said, I was kind of like learning to walk in public. It's like all my mistakes are, first timer mistakes are very much on display there, and then I would send it to my editor back then. That involved a fax machine. Or I would FedEx it to him because there was no internet.
More old technology.
Fax
machines.
Yeah, fax machines. And then I'd start on the next one. And then about 2 months later, I'd get a fax. I'd get a FedEx package with the Xeroxes of the pencils for the issue that issue I'd sent, and then I would check it, and then I'd get another one with the lettering on it, and then I would have to, I was FedExing things back and forth, and I would make the corrections in terms of dialogue or whatever that had to be done, or and then I would get the corrected ones sent to me, and then by this time I'm like writing a third or fourth issue because it was just like that, and then eventually 3 3 to 4 months down the line, 5 months down the line, then I'd get 20 copies of the comic, and I'd also I also ended up having to edit the letter columns.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah, I ended up. Yeah. Oh, they gave me the letters to pick.
Yeah.
And occasionally I would answer, but yeah, it was up to me to which letters would show up,
Yep.
or they would pick some and they said, which one do you want, and so that it
But
was.
you never had to clean the office or anything.
No,
like
I never
that.
had to
So
cut.
good.
You know,
Well, at
I
least
was
they didn't
living
make
in
you
New
do it.
Orleans most of the time, so I'm just lucky I didn't do it when I was in New York. But yeah, it was like a. And at some point they would also send me a color Xerox of the cover for me to check, and it was a machine, and but when I moved to New York, I could actually walk or take the train to the DC headquarters. And I distinctly remember the one time when I came over there to talk about something, and they said, you want to meet Tatjana, my colorist, Tatjana Wood, who was the widow of Wally Wood. And so they took me, I said, sure. And so they took me, this is back when coloring and lettering was done in-house, still in-house. And they took me deep into the bowels of 666.
Yeah, that is the DC address. 666
yeah,
Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, took me deep into the bowels, and I was going through like all these airlocks, and I was thinking, God, if Stuart like turns around, disappears on me, I'll never get out of here. And go deep into and met Tatjana and my letterer, John Costanza.
Mm-hmm.
I know Tatjana's not with us anymore, but I don't know about John.
I don't think he is, but I'm not positive.
Yeah.
on that.
And this was like 30 years ago, and got to meet them, and that's all gone now. It's all digital now. It's all outsourced. Same with the lettering, and so I was probably like that last generation that got to see and experience comics made in the more traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
By that point, the writers and the artists didn't have to live in New York, though. I mean, I just happened to move to New York. I didn't have to move to New York, and but by that point, the editors still did, and now that's not even true. Editors can live anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
And you may not be aware of this, but some companies like DC Comics has, in the post-COVID environment, they've gone from a situation where they have a separate office for every editor and they come in and work all day. They've gone with what they call a hot desk system, where they have 8 or 10 editorial desks, and if an editor comes in, he can grab a desk and work. They do that because so many editors work from home. 9 times out of 10, they don't need those spaces. So they went from having an entire floor of offices to just a central room with desks that an editor can make use of if he needs to, and then can leave. They've got the computer access there for what they need. But they said, the idea of people going to an office, it doesn't exist much anymore.
Yeah, same in traditional publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a single editor in publishing right now that actually has an office on Publishers Row.
But when you're looking at like the Swamp Thing run, all that lettering, that is hand lettering. That is not computer lettering.
Yeah.
There's some great letterers today who they have done hand lettering to create their own custom fonts for their own computer lettering.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there's a lot of manipulation for the spacing of words and emphasis and that sort of thing. It's more of an art form than just typing in text and it magically fills up a balloon. But back then, it was all done by hand.
All done by hand with little rulers, and I mean, I've watched people do it, and some people still do it, but it's labor intensive,
Mm-hmm.
and it is quickly becoming a lost art.
Yes, very much so.
But did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any-
Follow-up ones, I had 2 answers.
Any other questions from anybody?
Justin, you got a good one?
Yeah,
I mean, there's one question I always have for writers, which is imposter syndrome. Like, did you ever deal with that? You talked about
Oh,
the
yeah,
tightrope
yeah.
analogy a little bit.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Early on, I had a little bit, and I remember shortly after my first novel came out, and I was meeting all these writers who I had admired and collected and were influential on me, and I remember having a dream, or I was at a signing, and someone was standing there telling me how great my book was, and I just pulled it out of the stack and flipped it open, and it was completely blank. And I just closed it and stuck it back in the stack, and just, I hope no one would notice. But I didn't really feel like, much of that, because I was accepted so readily and so warmly by so many writers. And like I said, even before I became a writer, I'd become very close friends with John Shirley and Carl Edward Wagner, rest his soul.
Yes.
And I had occasion to meet, and George Alec Effinger.
Mm-hmm.
I had the occasion to meet, when I was 19, I met Stephen King back when he was still doing conventions, and that was at
Was it the
Kubla
Nashville?
Khan.
Yeah, Nashville. That's
Where he
where I
was
met-
just sitting around drinking a beer, eating a hot dog in the convention suit, and he and I just sat there and we discussed what was better, brown or yellow mustard.
and at that same convention, I got up. I'm an early riser. Back then, I was a high school teacher, and I got up fairly early, and I saw Stephen King sitting by the pool at the hotel. So I just went out. I grabbed something for breakfast. I just went out and took a chair next to him and said, "Hey," introduced myself, mentioned that I was a teacher. He mentioned that he had been a teacher, which I already knew, but he said, no matter how horrifying my fiction is, there's nothing as horrifying as the students I had to teach. And he hated it, every minute of it. And
Ooh,
we
yeah.
talked for a while. We had actually about a 45-minute conversation rather than just signing. I said, "I've got some books I'll get you signed later on." He said, "Go grab them now," and wrote like a half a page inside each book about what he liked about this book, or just things that we talked about. So it was a great moment. That was at a time when you could actually just approach an author like that. It was an amazing time back then.
It just I'd met him, and then when I finally got my first novel published and started doing I became very close friends with Joe, and I'm still close friends with Joe R. Lansdale. Alan Moore, Neil. I'd met Neil shortly before Sandman.
Mm-hmm.
And he was more impressed with me because I had a book out.
Yes.
And that was I look at it back and I go, that's yeah. and one of my mentors was Robert Bloch, who had been H.P. Lovecraft's protege, and the guy who wrote Psycho. And he was another grandfather to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I miss him dearly. And I got to meet all kinds of people. Peter Straub, rest his soul, he was a wonderful man, incredibly talented, and it's a shame we're watching them all fall away now, but that is the way of things. But
Stephen King had once said, and this is a paraphrase because he can't quote exactly, but he had said that he has a tremendous admiration for writers, and he said, if you've ever put words on paper and someone gave you money that you used to buy your groceries or pay your power bill, then you're a professional writer, and my hats are off to you. He said, and that's what I've seen with a lot of writers, and have you been your experience too, that they're very accepting?
Yeah.
There isn't this
No.
class system where, oh, you're a new writer, I'm sorry, you go sit in that group.
Yeah. I was very warmly. I used to get Christmas cards from Ray Bradbury.
Mhm.
I mean, he was a real sweetheart, it was, and Will Eisner
Yeah.
was another one of my mentors, as was Archie Goodwin, and very welcoming. And like I said, the Bernie Wrightson accepted me instantly, and a lot of people who, Marv Wolfman. I mean, people who were extremely influential with me in terms of like developing how I write, especially how I write comics, or how I see, interpret horror and stuff, horror and science fiction. They were all very accepting of me, and I tried to be equally accepting of other writers. And the publishing world has changed radically since I first got started. It's not, it will continue to mutate throughout what's left of my life. But but I got to see the last of the great old ones pass this way.
Not in the Lovecraftian sense, of course.
Well, some of them, yes, in the Lovecraftian sense, because they helped create it.
Yes, that is true.
But yeah, I got to meet some of the people who they got their publishing start in weird tales, in the pulps. Some of the like I said, Fritz Leiber.
Yes. For me, it was E. Hoffman Price.
I thought he was never going to die.
I did too.
I mean,
E. Hoffman Price was the only
he
person I
was
ever.
almost 100.
I know, and he's the only person I ever met who had in his lifetime met in person H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and Clark Ashton Smith, and it was to have a link where you're one step removed from three of the greatest fantasy horror writers of all time is pretty amazing.
Yeah, he didn't meet Duster Dent.
Yes.
Yeah, that was or Maxwell Grant.
Yep.
So yeah, that would have been well, that's more than a hat trick, but he'd have turkeyed.
That's true.
So but yeah, getting to meet these people, before they passed on, and I got to meet people like Harry Harrison and Ben Bova, and oh God, Lester that's another one I thought was never going to die, even though I could have sworn he was dead several times. Yeah, but Philip Jose Farmer.
Ah, yes.
And all these guys, Harlan. It's just. We'll never see their likes again, because the world that taught them how to write doesn't exist anymore. No. But I think we're coming back around to like getting paid for the penny, half penny on the word, judging from some of the articles I read online. I'm going, just get to the recipe. Just get to the recipe.
I see a lot of that. How far do I have to scroll to get to something I wanted in this article?
Yeah. So, but if I've answered everyone's questions, and y'all can come up. One more. All right.
So, Blade, like the cyberpunk Blade Runner kind of thing, is like my laser focus. But so I'm still kind of getting, I guess, acquainted. I haven't really gotten into like the actual literary works that started it all, like Isaac Asimov, all that stuff.
Well, he would. Well, you mean the base ground?
Well, that's so exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I only know this X amount. Blade Runner, was it based on like a book?
Blade Runner is based on a book by Philip K. Dick.
Right.
Called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
Okay.
Blade Runner, they bought, for some ungodly reason, they bought the name Blade Runner from William S. Burroughs, who was one of the beatniks, aka Naked Lunch. I have no idea why they bought that title from him and glued it on to "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" And I do know that Phil wrote a lot. Well, several of his not. If anyone had ever told me that Philip K. Dick would be one of the most adapted science fiction writers of the late 20th century, I would have laughed. Because his stuff was very, very psychedelic and weird and paranoid. He was science fiction equivalent of Lovecraft in many ways.
And he just started off. He was a craftsman who told very standardized stories for companies like Ace Books in the late 50s and early 60s, but he blossomed from there into this amazing writer she's talking about.
And I mean, Through a Scanner Darkly, Total Recall, Ubik. Has that been adapted yet?
There has been an independent adaptation of it, yes.
What's the one?
Man in the High Castle was adapted.
Yeah, Man in the High Castle. What's the one with Tom Cruise? I forget. I'm kidding.
Minority Report.
Minority Report. Right. I'm constantly amazed, and it all started with Blade Runner, but Phil died before it came out. It was in production. He was very impressed with it, and literally died before it came out. But I do remember Bill Gibson telling me that he'd gone to see it. He was in the process of writing Neuromancer. And he got up and left after the first 10 minutes because he's like, nope. and went home because he realized it was too close to what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I've had to do that myself a couple of times. So you can't run the risk of being contaminated. And
someone had once said that a technology, if sufficiently advanced, is so close to magic you can't tell the difference. And that seems to be to a degree, what Philip K. Dick tapped into.
Yeah.
So
I think he also used his work to explore his own schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Well, because I think one, like I said, I'm glad. I know very little. You know very a lot. So it's like, I don't want to present anything like that. But so I'm, like I said, like I'm an artist, so I'm a lot more visual than anything, and so I guess I'm curious as to how it felt. Clearly, Blade Runner was not the first like sci-fi, world building, like movie, like visual, whatever.
No.
But like I know that when I first saw it, like even now, given other media of the same flavor, I was just like,
well, there's always
mind blowing.
There's always one science fiction film that sets itself and that becomes kind of like the benchmark. For a certain era. Before that, it had been 2001: A Space Odyssey, which still holds up amazingly.
Wow.
And it makes and before that, I would say it had been Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Planet, for the darker science fiction side of things, perhaps Day the Earth Stood Still. Robert Wise.
That's also dark.
Yeah.
In terms of storytelling, those were the ones beforehand, and I would say The Matrix for its era,
right?
And it keeps.
I see what you're saying. So like
about every 20 years, about every 20 years.
And it really helps to go back and familiarize yourself with what became the landmark for those eras, just because it gives you a historical grounding in what has changed, to see how science fiction changes its approach to technology in the future. And you will see how each one sort of influences the big one that comes after it. So.
Because basically you have to be a fan of this stuff to keep going ahead with it. Right. You have to have a understanding of what went before to be able to not recreate the wheel, basically. Planet of the Apes was another one.
Oh, yeah.
That was a huge influence. Yet another one of those markers.
Very much so.
Yeah, that one definitely in terms of practical makeup and everything else. And this.
I don't think if Planet of the Apes had not opened the door for social commentary in science fiction, I don't think we'd have gotten Logan's Run a few years later. Because
no.
It showed there was a market for that.
No. There had always been a certain level of social commentary.
Yeah.
But it not on a blockbuster level,
right.
And in its own way, the Planet of the Apes social commentary is also echoed in Blade Runner.
Very much so.
So
You guys are talking about how it's hard to come up to an author now and just talk to them. So I want to make sure you guys have time to do that with everyone. So I think it's a good time to wrap
It's
up.
since Cliff and I have known each other since I was in high
we could
school,
do
we
this
just
for
sit here.
hours,
Yeah, y'all remember that? Yeah, I remember that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to
Thank-
talk to us.
thank you.